right, well, welcome back to Overnight Experts, the podcast where we talk and hopefully educate you a little bit about something we ourselves just learned the night before. I'm Aeden.
I'm David.
And I'm JJ.
So let's get into today's topic, which I had originally said was going to be something related to standards and practices, which is kind of how they basically punish people for screwing things up on live TV. But then I was just doing some research and I found that the kind of like movie ratings, which is what got me started on it, was a little bit more interesting in the first place. So now we're doing the MPAA ratings. MPAA is the Motion Picture Association of America. That's right. We're talking United States of America, not Canada. Sorry, David.
Wow, rude.
Yeah.
Uncalled for.
They're the ones that do like G and PG.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
So the MPAA kind of got its start in 1968 when it originally replaced this thing called the Hayes Code, which was written by a guy whose last name was Hayes. I've already forgotten his first name, but and this guy he had established kind of a motion picture code of ethics, and these, included all the things that you would assume somebody of the 1930s, which I think is when it got started, those kinds of attitudes you would expect them to have. No hard drug use, no homosexuality, that, all of the fun stuff.
No hooch, see? Meh.
Yeah, everyone has to talk like that too.
So the MPAA eventually came along and replaced that in 1968, and then became this kind of voluntary system for films to submit themselves to be rated, and then and they display this rating before trailers, before the movie itself, and it's just for theaters to kind of figure out how appropriate a movie is and who it can be shown to.
So this might be outside of the scope of your research for this, but why are movies singled out? Like, is there like a similar one for, I guess, like for radio?
Well, so that was originally going to be kind of my scope, and then I ended up having a little bit, I guess, too much to do. So I don't know about radio specifically, actually. That was the one I did not research. But yeah, so there are different ratings boards for different things. So like CDs and music have the Recording Industry of America, RIAA. They do, they only have one thing really, which is parental advisory stickers.
Just slap it on there.
You just slap it on the thing. If there's a swear word, boom, done. And then, video games also have the ESRB, the Entertainment Software Ratings Board.
Yeah, pretty sure that's what it stands for.
Is there one for books?
I did not actually look up or see that. I don't think there technically is, because at that point you start getting into some weird free speech issues.
Books are like the most deregulated thing.
Right. Like, I've never seen a rating on a book apart from you should read this if you're 7.
It's interesting. I don't think so, and it could be a good topic for another time, but essentially no.
It just seems like every multimedia thing has developed its own industry standard for like content ratings and stuff. So
yeah, which is, part of the kind of the problem is that they essentially develop these things for themselves. So it's like they stand to gain by having this system in place, and not by having somebody outside of the industry take a look at it, even though they say it's all third party and above board and whatnot.
I know at least in the ESRB that's found not to really be true. I don't know much about the MPAA, but it'd be interesting if they're similar.
Well, and actually, it's funny. The ESRB is the one thing that's actually kind of related. So when the MPAA, this is long after it had been founded at this point, but they were looking kind of in the 80s and 90s at doing a system of rating video games, and then they started this whole commission to rate video games essentially, and then the commission kind of eventually branched off, became independent, was like, no, we don't actually want you guys to be doing it, we want to do this for ourselves.
Yeah, which I guess if you want to keep the control, that's a great way of doing it, of like, oh yeah, we'll do it ourselves, you just leave us alone, please.
Yeah,
it seems like more of like a stopgap, like rather than have like a government start making rules, which quite frankly could also be like way out of touch in their own special ways. Like, try and handle it yourself, and if you get that right, usually it keeps going. If not, then that's when people start lobbying, and who knows.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, I'm like, all these rating bodies, are they just like private entities, or are any of them within the government?
No, so none of them are government operated. RIAA, MPAA, ESRB, these are all, independent bodies.
Okay, because you could definitely see how a corrupt government could definitely abuse the system if they were deciding what is an acceptable form of media and what isn't.
Oh, for sure.
See also China.
Yeah, well, yeah. What is the Canadian system?
I gotta look this up. It's very similar, but like it feels like the discount knockoff. So in America, there's PG-13. In Canada, it's PG-14.
Okay, so that's weird because I mean, this is not, again, I don't know if MPAA does television, but we have only on television we have PG-13 and PG-14, which are two different things.
We have TV-14, and the TV rating system is different than the MPAA. They're different.
And the line is always blurred now that most things are online in the same space, so it's confusing.
So in Canada, we've got the Canadian Motion Picture Rating System.
CMPRS.
I guess, I don't know. It's never, it doesn't come up nearly as much as the MPAA because we're just keeping up.
It's America. Everything is focused on us all the time.
Well, yeah, and we're also not really making a whole bunch of movies. It's all the American studios.
This is true.
But more or less, it's the same system. I don't know if it spoils what you're going to talk about later.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I guess, we've tossed out these, PG-13, G, etc. So I guess this is probably the best time for me to go into what these ratings actually are. So there are 5 total ratings. There's G, there's PG, PG-13, there's R, and then there is the dreaded NC-17 rating.
So I've always forget if NC-17 stands above R or not.
It does. NC-17, which you almost never see movies like that these days, but every now and again it happens. And so it stands for what? No children under 17. So like R, you could still take children under 17 to that movie just with parents.
And with NC-17, I'm like, no, seriously, don't do it.
So a rated R movie, you can bring in children who are under 17. Like, is there like any sort of guidelines on that? Or is it like, we assume that parents are responsible, just do what you feel is right?
Yep, that is exactly it.
Oh, no. I don't know if you know this, but parents are not responsible. They do not do what's right.
It's very much like seems like it's based on good faith from what I see. And I'm sure there's like problems of like, if a theater starts like allowing like children into something restricted, it will be found out, but usually the blame is put on the families.
There you go. Therein lies the trick. There is no enforceability of these ratings. Theaters are not liable for what people end up seeing, and companies are not responsible. If somebody sees this, they don't have to. You can just walk into an R-rated movie. I mean, a ticket seller will not sell you a ticket just based on the policies of the theater, but you cannot be punished for seeing an R-rated movie.
Honestly, they make nothing on the actual movies anyway, so I don't blame them for not caring.
Well, okay, so like I guess the system is somewhat helpful so that you're not going into a movie not realizing, I'll get to see someone beaten into a bloody pulp. On the other hand, like it kind of seems a little pointless especially now where we're all just so desensitized and dead inside that what does it matter what I'm watching at the movies?
Well, and that's the thing. So, they advertise it as being kind of like by parents for parents. So, the guideline is not necessarily like, what you as an individual ticket buyer would see, but it's like, what can you as your parents take someone to, and what can you as a parent allow your child to go to? So what JJ was saying earlier, like it's on the parents. Yeah, it kind of is, because there's nobody else who is responsible for anything.
So the MPAA is run by parents?
So they're not technically run by parents, but the board that does the actual ratings, which is a subset of the MPAA, is called the the Classifications and Ratings Administration, or CARA, CARA. So this is a small board, generally about 8 people, sometimes more, and they basically they're the people who watch the movie, take a poll and a vote on what you think the movie should be rated, and then that's the rating that gets given to the movie.
So it's like just like internal boards trying to figure out generally what it is.
Yep. And these people who are on the car, they are supposedly unaffiliated with the movie industry. They're basically what the MPAA says is that they're just regular parents who have kids, from like 5 to 17.
Sure.
Yeah, no, and exactly, like, they don't tell you anything about it. This is like information I had to dig around to find. Like, the MPAA does not really want you to know about this, and they don't tell you who these people are or how you can become one, or like whether or not they get paid to do this. It's all very opaque and mysterious.
Oh, I want to be paid to do that. Just like show up and just be like, yeah, I have like 7 kids, and just like see what like ridiculous ratings I can set on something. I'm gonna get you all a G-rated Deadpool movie. Promise.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we say that word all the time at home.
Yeah. See, I don't see the problem with this. Yeah.
You guys do too. Come on.
I regenerate my limbs at home all the time. Oh gosh.
So yeah, that's more or less the very basic gist of it. But going back to the ratings for a second, they were originally only 4 ratings. There was G, there was M, there was R, and there was X rated.
Ooh.
And so X it was phased out first, and then became, I guess, was reintroduced as NC-17 later. But X, like, essentially the pornography industry started using X as their, trademark branding, whatever, X-rated. And so when people started associating X-rated movies with porn, that's when the MPAA was like, yeah, we should probably find a different lettering system for this one.
I guess that one's kind of funny because of the fact that pornography uses it as like X-rated or like XXX or whatever, like more people know about that as a rating than NC-17. Like nobody really realizes that they phased it out.
Right. Well, and you have to wonder like how much of it is actually the Streisand effect at work. Like, were people then associate it because the MPAA was like, oh, maybe we should phase this out, or did people look at that X, think, porn, in which case, why are these people all watching that much porn? And, and not take their kids to see this movie.
Or, maybe they saw X and they thought, here be treasure.
You're right. And marked the spot.
Exactly. So, like, I don't know if you're going to get to this in your discussion, but I feel like this system is a little antiquated. We don't have to just arbitrarily decide, oh, well, this isn't suitable for children because, of my personal values. Like, I feel like there has to be some sort of psychology. You could theoretically do a study to see, all right, these types of scenes that are, this violent, or like this amount of violent content, this amount of sexual content. If we do research on children, we can see that if they're watching this sort of thing, it is damaging to them. Is there anything in the works for my utopian vision where we use science to
long story short, not really, unfortunately. So part of it is because like the theaters, again, even though none of this is enforceable, like theaters still have agreements with the MPAA, and this is where it gets a little shady, to only show movies that have an MPAA rating. So therefore, the MPAA is the only game in town. Therefore, unless you are like a privately owned indie chain, you're not going to, and then your margins are going to be razor thin anyway. Like, you're not going to be able to show something that doesn't have this rating.
Okay, well, that's a little depressing.
Well, and that's why they think the car is so effective. Again, why they think, because they think that parents contextualizing things, and this isn't necessarily wrong. Like, the fact that a parent would be there to contextualize something for the kid is probably the most effective method of determining what is appropriate, because not everything is going to be appropriate for kids even of the same age, right? Kids process things differently, kids have different experiences, so what might work for one kid, 12-year-old, say, might not work for another 12-year-old.
I would rather that parents take the responsibility of knowing what they're showing their kids, and also like helping them understand things, because there's a time when they're going to see something on TV or in a movie that's like hard to understand. It might not be necessarily bad or harmful, but just something they hadn't experienced before. And let them handle that conversation is a good thing, but also providing, enough guidance to be like, hey, this content is in here. It's usually good, but mostly vague in systems that are very generic.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like even even in unrated things like on YouTube, which probably does need a better rating system than it currently has. I know some people, or I know of some people who will just leave their kid in front of YouTube for hours on end. And they just watch, like, not even something that's like offensive or like inappropriate. It's just like a random assortment of clips. Like I've seen what they're watching, and I'm like, I'm going insane watching this mishmash of sound and light. Like, what? This is not okay.
I was at a restaurant and like it was like across the room, but I could still hear it. But there was like a family just having their meal, and just to keep their kids like satiated or whatever, they just sat them with their iPhone down and just had like a playlist of Finger Family songs, and it was like those are like the worst because they're so annoying, and I could hear them from across the room. I just wanted to like, if I was enough of a jerk, I would have turned it off, but I'm not. I wouldn't do that. It would cause a lot of issues, and I like that restaurant. I want to go back.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the thing is, right, like, so, parents are relying on the MPAA, and now, just like that, they're relying on YouTube, which doesn't have a rating system, but they're still trusting these systems that have been put in place to do their work for them, essentially, which is to parent.
I wouldn't trust the YouTube Kids app as far as I could throw it, and I could throw a phone pretty far.
Well, yeah, like even on TV, like in general, there are all these outcries of, oh, we need to censor this TV show. I can't believe you said this very offensive thing on TV, and it'll be in a show like Family Guy, of like, you as a child should not be watching that already. Like, I get it's a cartoon, but you got to know what your kid's watching. Like, you can't, your TV can't raise your child.
Wasn't there like a bigger controversy about that when like Adult Swim started and people like didn't realize, oh yeah, hey, letting your kids watch Cartoon Network all night, maybe at some point they assume the kids are in bed and they're going to play ridiculous things like Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Right. Well, like in the UK, I've heard. Well, I guess when I was living in Australia, it was a similar thing. They have what they call the watershed.
Yeah, it's like the time, like a programming block, right?
Yeah, like after 9:00, it just all goes out the window. Of you can see like the most violent sexual things all on TV, and I'm like, oh wow, this is okay. I guess I'll do something else right now. No TV for me, thank you.
No holds barred at that point.
Well, it's funny, David, because like whenever you mention like the things that would be considered "quote unquote" objectionable content, like you always mention violence first, and yet when it comes to the MPAA ratings, like oftentimes they are much more lenient when it comes to violence than when it does come to sexual content.
Yeah, well, I think part of that has to come from personal experience, and herein lies the problem of having a subjective rating body. Of, like for me personally, let's get very personal. I when I was younger, I got a very bad leg injury. Like I broke all 3 bones in one of my legs. This was over 10 years ago, and to this day, if I see anyone's legs getting hurt, like I just have this visceral cringe reaction. Like I cannot look at it. I can't even think about it. Mm-hmm. And I cognitively know it's not happening to me. It's not real. It's all special effects. But like something in my brain just triggers. So if I were on this board, I feel like I would rate a movie with leg injuries higher than I would something that had, I don't know, like a hand injury.
All right, because that's specific to your experience.
Right.
Yeah. And when you have such a small board of people, like one vote tends to go a long way. So you're right. That is statistically another problem with the MPAA rating system.
And very much, I think it reflects kind of like culture. Like we talk about it, like it is kind of weird that it's way more acceptable to show someone like getting mutilated than like a very normal act of like, sexual conduct on television. And it's like, why is there such a dichotomy there? And I think it very much kind of is very much a cultural thing of there are some things that people, I guess, either like accept more or dissociate from reality less, depending on how they view things. And it's like, well, what's allowed is very much based on the society it's based in.
Well, and if you read the language that actually goes into the MPAA ratings, like they use the word nudity a lot, but then they also at some point use the word, I believe they use the term sexual nudity. So like I guess underwear is considered nudity, but then sexual nudity is I guess bare skin, maybe a naked breast. I don't know, but
Well, yeah, like I what was it? Like for my job, I was reading this like this handout, and it's like recommending, hey, if you want to see good examples of people, I don't know, like reacting emotionally to situations, why don't you watch a clip from the Disney show Phineas and Ferb? And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty inoffensive.
Pretty good show, yeah.
And then they're like, just a disclaimer, there are some scenes where a character's pants fall down and he's in his underpants. And I'm like, are you what?
Have you not seen like all of Nickelodeon in the 90s? Because they were constantly making jokes about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I just played the SpongeBob video game. You have to collect underpants as a power-up. Come on now.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's either your pants fall down and everyone sees your underpants, which are white with red hearts, or they're going to dump slime on you. That's Nickelodeon in the 90s in a nutshell.
So content warning, underpants, was the concern here.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Honestly, as much as people joke about like trigger warning or content warning things, I almost like the idea of being a little more specific of, hey, this thing has this particular thing in it. Like say like leg injury. Like if there's at least enough of a summary available that kind of explains the scene without, I guess, spoiling, or maybe if you don't care.
There are some websites, and these are all definitely third party, not any officially endorsed endeavors. There are other places that delve into more specifics as to what a movie is about. I didn't look any of those up, but I can think of a few off the top of my head. But point being, yeah, so you could, if you really wanted to do your research, get this information, but it is not immediately provided to you by the MPAA yet.
Yeah, well, I've seen similar sites, I guess, that are done through the lens of Christian parents.
Oh, have any of you guys ever seen Focus on the Family's video game site?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so interesting because they do the same thing. They got like, content reviews and stuff. But to be quite frank, they are very, very biased in ways that like don't make sense. I think they complain. There's like a infamous Resident Evil 4 thing they did, and it's like I think they just complained about like what's the female character in Resident Evil 4 again? I forget her name.
Jill.
No, Jill's in 1 and 3. I can't remember 4. Whatever. Like they were complaining about her pants being like too short because they're like like short jeans. And I'm like, is that your problem with this game?
Yeah, have you not seen that character from Metal Gear Solid?
Oh yeah, because Silent, the woman who doesn't talk, and that's her whole personality.
But see, there's a very important story reason as to why she had her pants off. I can't remember what it is because I never played it, but still.
It's because they alluded that she might photosynthesize. There's your spoiler.
Terrible. Absolutely.
So bad. What the heck, Kojima? Oh. Yeah, Focus on the Family video game reviews. Go find them. They're interesting.
But that is interesting when it comes to like video games. Oftentimes video games are, I would say, more global. There's a lot of developers in different countries providing the video games that come to America versus the MPAA, which obviously there's a whole booming foreign film industry, but like a lot of the movies that get rated in general are American films made with American sensibilities in mind.
Yeah, and I guess with the ESRB, they do seem a little more transparent, or maybe I've just been able to research a little better because they will talk about, all right, here's why we rated it this way. Because it'll say things like, just cautioning you, there are references to drugs and alcohol in this video game. And sometimes drugs and alcohol are things, very normal, like wine and cigarettes, which I don't know how you can go through life without knowing the existence of wine and cigarettes, but that's what they warn you about the existence of.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of like kids have already seen those in their own family, like whatever.
But like, they also don't know. Like I was surprised watching the movie Ratatouille. I guess knowing what I knew about ratings, like they drink wine, and the main character Linguini gets drunk in a kids movie.
Yeah, he does. He
came out like what, 2006?
Yeah.
2007, something
Yeah.
like that.
Which is like, I feel like early Disney, like everyone's getting drunk all the time. And then they decided, maybe this is a problem, especially if you're a child and your parents abuse alcohol. Maybe we shouldn't show this to you.
Wasn't it like Sleeping Beauty where there's like a whole scene of like the whole song is about like two kings getting drunk together? Like that's the whole thing. They just don't say what it is. They just,
there's, the tripping out scene in Dumbo.
Oh yeah, the pink elephants. Did they redo that in the remake? I feel like it must have been awful.
No, I know they took out the racist crows in that one.
Oh yeah, the fact that they named a crow Jim Crow while that was still active law in most of the nation. Oh,
well, there's also the Great Mouse Detective where they're at a strip club and their drinks get drugged.
Oh, I forgot about that scene.
Sorry, back to my point. I was watching Ratatouille when I worked at a summer camp, and someone's like, "Oh, look, he's drinking the juice, and now he's acting all funny." Like kids don't know.
Well, I mean, they don't they might not get it, but they pick things up, and if again, if a kid did have some experience with alcoholism in their family, they would definitely know what's going on in that scene. So that is why these content warnings are actually or can be appropriate in some cases, but not in these weird, overly broad, almost puritanical terms that we currently use.
Well, that's the thing too of going back to the Christian rating board. I'm not sure of the specific things, but I'm sure they would rate someone taking the Lord's name in vain a lot higher than a more secular rating board would.
There must be reviews where they give it a lower score because it says, "Oh my God," but I don't have exact references. I'm going to try and find this.
Well, and going way back to the guy who's the Hayes Code, Hayes, the guy who invented this code that the MPAA replaced. One of his rules was no religion whatsoever, and he wasn't doing that just to avoid delicate topics. He was doing that because he didn't want exactly anybody to take the Lord's name in vain.
So just don't even bring it up.
Right. So his way of making sure that happened was to avoid it completely.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what society's moved towards of let's not fight about this. Let's not upset anyone. Let's just take out all religious iconography, which is just very different. Well, if you've ever tried to look at what the original version of a Japanese video game or anime looks like, you will often see a lot more religious symbolism that American localizers just have to take out because they're like, okay, Legend of Zelda, this is great. We can't have him go into a temple, grab the Bible, and then use this to destroy monsters. We can't do this. It's not appropriate.
Oh yeah, but they did leave in some the original Legend of Zelda. They left in the cross in a couple places, but they just changed the name around. And then there's Castlevania, where it's just Richter will just throw the Bible as a ward around himself and just spinning around, and it's okay, that's where we're going.
Well, and so the MPAA, I mean, they don't disclose this at all, obviously, but they also have what some people have termed this. It's called a masterpiece exception. So they'll watch a movie, they'll realize that some of the content would probably merit a rating for either R or NC-17 or whatever, and then they'll be like, "Oh, but it was such a good movie, and so many people need to see this movie. Let's just bump it down a little bit."
Yeah, there's definitely some I don't know if it's called bias, but it's clear that it's not always consistent.
Well, I think the example I read was it was Saving Private Ryan. I think the sheer amount of blood, gore, and just overall horror that occurs in that movie could have almost gone at an NC-17, but then they were like, "No, we're okay with an R."
And that one's a weird line because so few things actually hit NC-17. It's almost bad. It almost seems like bad marketing to get an NC-17 because less people will see it.
Yeah, they call it the kiss of death for a reason. If you have an NC-17 movie, you are almost likely, a theater is not likely to carry it because they don't have to, because they don't think that people are going to want to see it, and it's just not going to happen.
Well, I think that was the turning point a couple of years ago of they were really concerned about releasing R-rated superhero movies. That this would never sell. Who would go to a superhero movie? They're all for kids, even though literally every adult goes to see these things.
Yep.
And you know what? They did this for a couple movies, and it was very successful. So it just goes to show that no one knows what they're talking about at all.
Yeah, it's like as soon as you try, like, hey, Deadpool was super successful. Logan is the best family road trip movie I've seen in a very long time. Like, all those were great ideas. Just you had to take the chance and realize, oh, hey, we can do this with this content, and it's fine. Not only is it good, but it also sold well.
But yeah, going back to what we were saying, I think the problem is that they just kind of arbitrarily, you need to be this age to watch this movie. We're not really going to go into detail about what the content is we're warning you about. And Netflix is a little better with that. They've got more specific. Here's a rating, or here are things to look out for, just so you know it's going to have violence, it's going to have nudity, it's going to have references to self-harm. That's a new trigger warning I've seen.
They have like at least little tags that.
Right. Which, I mean, how hard would that be to translate that to the movie industry? But I can just imagine, you telling someone, "Oh, I'm going to go see an NC-17 movie," and they're like, "Whoa, hey, leave me out of this. Like, that's gross. You do that on your own time."
Yeah, it's like, okay, buddy.
Even if it's just rated that because of excessive violence, which maybe you are someone who's okay with that, but you wouldn't be okay with excessive sexuality.
I would just be awkward if I was in a movie theater and it was just like a full-on sex scene that like NC-17. Like, I'm not saying it shouldn't like happen in a movie if it makes sense with the context, but if I'm sitting there and I didn't expect it, I just be like,
"Geez, I'm sorry, Grandma, I didn't know."
My grandma wanted to see this too. I don't know what's going on. Oh boy.
Well, I'm like, and I don't know your grandmothers, but like also not every grandmother these days is a prude, so maybe your grandmother would be okay with it.
Oh, I mean, I saw Fear Factor at my grandparents' house. That was that was freaky for like 6-year-old JJ.
Yeah, like there's something that I would rate a lot higher than it was rated. Like there's one episode where like they eat, I don't know, like bugs and unborn ducklings, like disgusting. Like I can't watch that.
Fear Factor bothers me so much, but I definitely saw an episode with like a whole lot of like cockroaches and stuff in it. It's like,
well, sure, I'm like, if you have arachnophobia, that eating spider thing is going to be a lot more unsettling than if you didn't.
Ugh.
Yeah, that whole thing's point is to gross people out, though. So it's like it's not like it's gonna stop.
Is that show still on?
It's called the Joe Rogan Podcast.
No, yeah, it came back for a while, but then I don't think it's still on right now.
It's a very, very stereotypical early 2000s TV show.
Yeah, I don't think stuff like that or like Kick-Ass or whatever just doesn't seem to exist anymore. Now you can just watch idiots on YouTube doing something stupid. Like, you want to see someone like fall off a roof? Just like look up Russians falling off roofs. It's all there.
Yeah, YouTube has replaced a lot of this. Well, and like with Netflix too, Netflix is obviously blurring the lines between what is a movie, what is a TV show, what is like entertainment in general. And so if they create something that theoretically could have been a movie, but then they just do different act breaks and you can make it into a 3 to 5 part miniseries or whatever, then you can rate each episode individually, or you have to rate each episode individually, or you can just rate it as a whole thing and stick it all together as a movie and throw it out there.
I mean, that's something I've seen in a couple things. Like, I'll generally kind of like notice the rating on a TV show if I'm watching, and if it's a broadcast one, it's still in the footage. So like if it's on Netflix, but like I'll notice like, oh hey, this one episode's PG-14. Oh, okay, so this one's got something else in it, and it's like that's a little more flexible. But it seems like most of the time they want to at least get people knowing what's going to be in it, and like right off the bat, like first episode, they're going to like set the bar on what the rating is generally going to be.
Yeah, well, I guess you also want to have a consistent tone to your series. Like you wouldn't do Game of Thrones and then bust out nudity and gore like 10 episodes into the series after everything else is very tame.
No, they had incest episode 1.
Well, yeah, you try to spread it out so that people know what they're getting into. You're not investing in something that turns out to be something that you're not interested in.
But then when it comes to something like that, if you have, an episode that for whatever reason doesn't feature any nudity or maybe doesn't feature any gore, maybe it's just this really, tense character study for an episode for whatever reason, like then what happens if you rate it lower and then compare it to the rest of the series? What if somebody watches that one episode and then gets a different impression?
There are optics to the ratings, that's for sure, because it's like people get an impression of what it's going to be like based on that. Like, oh, this is an R-rated movie. Like, or, oh, this TV show is PG-14 or something like that. And that kind of colors the impression people will have of it.
Yeah, nowadays people think oftentimes that R is going to be, the most, not the most hardcore, obviously, but people think R is what's the word I'm trying to say?
It's like this the one that's like, oh, this is serious. It's gonna be have more like serious tone or whatever. Or it's
I guess it's like the peak of it. Like, people think because the R rating is, fairly prevalent, but the NC-17 is practically non-existent. Like, people think R is now the peak of where you can go. So they don't necessarily think that it's going to get any worse than that.
Yeah, and well, I guess like for a movie that would be NC-17 now, if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, you can go other places. Like you wouldn't realistically go to a theater to watch that sort of movie. You watch that in the privacy of your own home. That I feel like people expect R to be this is the maximum that's acceptable to watch in public, especially now that home theater, home movie, streaming online is just so prevalent now. I don't know. People probably have an expectation of what is allowed in public and what's not.
I'd say so. And again, obviously, this doesn't apply to films shown abroad or foreign films in general. But this is part of the whole shady racket of the thing is that film companies and film distributors, they pay to have these movies rated. So if something gets shown on like a film festival circuit and then people like it, so like, all right, we'll bring it over to America, that way a lot of people can see it. They still have to pay to get that movie rated by the MPAA so it can get shown in theaters.
It's like if you wanted to be seen at all, it's like you've got to pay up.
Yep.
Does it seem like, I feel like there's sometimes some people believe that some movies like pay for a specific rating, and I don't know if there's any good proof or evidence to that. But one thing I heard people commenting that about, which may have just been from dissatisfaction with it, but The Killing Joke, an animated version of the Alan Moore comic with Batman and the Joker and all that was rated R. If you watch it, it's barely PG-13. It's rather tame.
Well, so yeah, that is interesting. I was thinking the other way, because obviously once you submit a film and they hand you a rating, you do have the chance to go back and edit it, maybe cut out some of the parts that they would find objectionable for whatever reason, and then resubmit it to the ratings board in order to hopefully get the rating lowered or get whatever your target rating is.
That's probably way more common.
Yeah, that happens a lot. But going the other way with it, deliberately shooting for a harder rating than you think the material warrants? Why would they do that? What is the conspiracy theory saying why they did this?
For this one, it seems like people they thought it would make it more appealing because, well, especially in that context, there's a lot of DC Comics animated movies, but they're all generally PG or PG-13. But The Killing Joke has like a kind of overhyped sense to it. Like a lot of people kind of look at it as like, oh, this is like, the best Batman thing ever. Oh, it's like such a dark like comic, and it's like even like the author kind of hates it. It's not as good as a lot of people make it out to be, but that's a whole different story. There's plenty of people who've reviewed it better than I can. But in that one, I think a lot of people just assume, oh, they paid to get an R rating because they wanted to appeal to a specific group, which would have wanted to see an R-rated version of it. But it really wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I did see the final product of The Killing Joke, and yeah, I guess that probably wouldn't be considered R rating. I mean, I guess Jim Gordon is kind of naked for half of it, but like you don't see
barely.
You don't see any animated Wang, so.
Well, now I'm not going to watch it. Jeez.
Sorry.
There was extra content they added to that. Like, was it Batgirl and Batman?
Well, yeah, and that whole thing was ridiculous. It was not a great adaptation, but I don't know. It's weird to think that somebody might have paid then to get it rated higher because, like, aside from the controversy of it all, which is, I guess, a halfway decent conspiracy theory. Like, why would you have done that?
I don't know if it holds much water, but I have wondered it myself of like, how often do people try to get a specific rating? Probably usually trying to punch down instead of punch up, but.
Well, yeah, because wouldn't it be easier just to make your movie more objectionable to the raters? of like just include gratuitous nudity, or like all of a sudden all the characters only know 5 words and all of them are profanities. Like I feel like there's so many easy ways to set yourself up for like a higher rating, and depending on your subject matter, you obviously have to cut down to get to a lower rating.
You could take the South Park route, where they, like, almost every episode they have like one specific scene that's way too far, and the FCC will reject it, and they say remove that scene, and then they just release it with the rest of it, which is probably also taking it further than they would approve. So it's like, just put in the one thing that catches the censors, and then just let the rest fly.
Well, and that's funny you mentioned South Park. So the guys who made South Park, they did a movie. I can't forget what it's called.
Team America?
No, also that one. Yeah, it's also a thing. No, they made a movie long before they were famous with South Park, and then that got an NC-17 rating for having a dildo on screen, and that was it. But
that wasn't even a real one, hanging.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. There's like no actual nudity. But they didn't have the money to, like, I guess they didn't have the money to blur it out or to resubmit it. They didn't have the money to actually like resubmit it to the board, and so it got the NC-17 rating.
Huh? Why does something like that get through? But like, anyone seen The Naked Gun?
Yeah, those old movies.
Yeah, the scene on like where he's like on the ledge of the building, and like there's like a statue and he tries to grab it, and well, the statue is, a classical nude statue, and he like rips off its own phallus, and it's like, how does that get approved better than that? That's ridiculous.
Art. It's the same reason you can take your kid to a museum but not to a R-rated movie.
Yeah, where are the content ratings on museums?
Oh my gosh, can you imagine just putting like an MPAA rating on like art, like classical art? Just, oh man.
Parental advisory.
Well, I've seen that. There's like the famous painting from the French Revolution of
where she has the breast exposed.
Right. And then I've seen like the edited version of that where she has no nipples, and I'm like, I don't know if that's any better.
You edited art.
Well, and then like, didn't Coldplay include that on an album cover? Did they have to censor it there?
Well, here's the thing of like, there's so many media that you can submit art on. Like, there's no possible way to regulate all of it unless you've got like the board of album art, the board of T-shirts. Well, here's another thing I wonder about. Like, people who have like swear words as T-shirts or as tattoos. Do we not need content ratings for that if we have to have TV and movies?
If you have that on your shirt, it's just like, yeah, everyone knows you're that guy.
I don't know. It comes back down to contextualizing. They think that people will be able to, explain it properly if asked, or, you as a parent, not that you guys are parents that I know of, can, explain it to your kids. But, I guess somehow in a movie theater, you got to pay for that privilege to explain it to them.
Yeah, I was rather sheltered. And the first time I saw like the F word was somebody's graffiti tagged it underneath a playground slide that I saw when I was like 5. So I'm like, yeah. It was just, that's a bad word. Don't look at that. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Whatever. I can't even read, Mom.
That can't stop me. I don't know how to read.
Oh man, people thought that was so funny on the playground though.
Yeah, whoever wrote it thought he was hilarious. Like, oh, I got to teach them a new word. It's like, nah.
Yeah, no, that is most of it. Where we go from here is a good question. So the last time that it was changed was the addition of the NC-17 in 1990, I believe it was. So that's 30 years ago now. Actually, I think it was like October of 1990. So we're coming up on 30 years of the MPAA rating being or not having changed. So that's almost half its life, because if it was started in 1968, that means the whole rating system is only then 52 years old. I'm doing my math right? Yeah, I got my math right. Cool. So it's more than half its lifespan. It has not changed. So yeah, where do we go from here?
It doesn't change much. The NC-17 thing was definitely a big change, but even like PG-13 didn't exist for a while until we had, was it Raiders of the Lost Ark, and some guy's face melted off.
Exactly. Oh no, it was Temple of Doom actually, and the ripping out.
Right.
Yeah, somehow people didn't object to the CGI of the dude's face melting off, but when a guy gets his heart ripped out with practical effects, like that's somehow more objectionable. And it was actually Spielberg himself, I think, called the head of the MPAA at the time, and then basically requested the PG-13 rating because he didn't want people to protest his movie, but he also wanted a lot of people to see it, and so the compromise was the now highly sought after PG-13 rating.
It was a sacrifice, so it was given a religious exemption.
Well, I guess the thing now is that you almost would want your movie to be protested as a creator. Like there are many authors now who are saying like having my books burned is the highest honor I could ever have. There's just not really this push to censor art in the way that there was of like if there's suddenly controversy around it, like the Killing Joke.
You talk to a conservative lately, I feel like that's all they complain about.
Right, but they would never have seen the movie anyway. They would never have heard about it. But now when you hear about, oh, wow, there's this Batman cartoon. It's rated R, a cartoon with Batman, the comic guy.
And that gets press. That's the thing.
Any publicity is good publicity, especially in the era of the internet where you can consume media without being judged of, maybe you stream it online, maybe you order it in. No one has to see you going into a theater to watch a very violent movie or a very objectionable movie. You can just do it on your own time.
True.
Yeah. At this point, it's like, I don't know, things seem much more open on what's permissible, especially, Hays Code is no longer a thing. I think it probably seems like it altered a lot of things. Like even now, like people are cagey about even bringing up religious subjects in something. And it's like, oh, wow, they did. It's like, who cares? But even that's kind of turning around.
We haven't lost these, like kind of knee-jerk reactions to sensitive subjects like religion, like nudity, like sexual content, that kind of thing. But at the same time, the world has changed, and now, content creators shouldn't necessarily have to feel pressured to submit to this one particular thing just in order for audiences to see it.
Well, yeah, and kind of like you were saying before, Aiden, like culture changes. Like you've got like the crows in Dumbo, called Jim Crow, but like you wouldn't do that now. But that is a kids movie because, I mean, at the time it was fine. You'll see, I think it's Warner Brothers who they release their old cartoons uncensored, but they're like, hey, just so you know, this was cool at the time. We recognize this is a little racist and offensive now. But,
yeah, Disney on Disney Plus, they do the same thing. They're like, yeah, this depiction was okay at the time, or even though it wasn't probably okay at the time, but now we're releasing it with this warning that this is not what our culture represents at the current time.
Yeah, that seems. Honestly, for the most part, I do like at least having something like that. It's like we'd rather not change it or censor it. We'd rather just be honest about admitting that this was done at that time. Maybe it was never okay, but that was what was seen as acceptable, and so just be aware.
And yeah, they still won't release Song of the South. Cowards.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to live in Splash Mountain and you just act like they never existed. Come on, just like own up.
Well, I wonder as well, like what's it going to look like in, let's say, 25 years of what is not acceptable now that you will see in like a PG movie, let's say. The first thing that comes to mind would be marijuana use. There's no way you could put that in a movie for kids today.
Well, I mean, that's not even, I mean, a movie maybe, but I don't know. Did you guys ever watch the old TV show Dinosaurs with the puppets?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that one. I always confuse that with like the Disney movie, but nobody remembers the Disney movie but me.
That movie terrified me for some reason. But so Dinosaurs, the TV show, it's a show with people in dinosaur puppet animatronic things. They did a whole episode on marijuana. Like I'm trying to remember if they actually use the word marijuana or not. I don't think they do, but they it starts off as this very special episode, and TV does this a lot too. But this is like very obliquely a kids show targeted at small children, and they just show marijuana usage. And at the very end, they have a little funny disclaimer about everything. But so yeah, it's how do you again, it's all about contextualizing. How do you do it in a way that kids can consume the information and also make sense of it in a way that works for them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that, probably a lot more than any ratings board can do. But if people are able to give a narrative that makes sense and helps inform and explain, and also parents who can also help with that, I don't think that should be left up to any media.
Parents, talk to your kids.
Yeah, 13 kids.
That's the thing of like, I feel like the ratings should be there to inform parents. Hey, just so you know, if you don't want to have a weird conversation with your kids about marijuana or about someone having their eyes poked out with someone's thumbs, don't watch this. It's not for you. But if you want to have that conversation, if you feel like your kid would be okay with that, sure, watch it. Like kids are sociopaths. They don't care. They don't know the context of a lot of things until you tell them that, oh, this is bad because of such and such, because of my values, or because this is how I feel about the issue. Like parents have to meet the ratings board halfway, where I think now they just see, oh, it's rated this. Well, I'm never taking my kids to this. I'm never going to let them even see that a cigarette exists.
And that's the thing about the MPAA ratings too. Like they not assume, but they feel like by going that halfway, they think the parents should then come meet them the other half. And so like, all right, we've done our job. We've put out the rating. We think this is a thorough and solid process, even though it's very sketchy and involves money, yada, yada. We're done. Hands off. That's it. But, somebody needs to step up. And I don't know if it's the parents. I don't know if it's the corporations. It usually should be the corporations, but it never is.
Well, I feel like the MPAA is going to become less relevant. Well, especially now of like, I would not go to a movie theater during the pandemic. Absolutely not. No way.
Nope, don't do it.
That I'm now not beholden to the ratings of the MPAA. I'm beholden to the ratings of Netflix. If there's something I'm trying to avoid, then I will look at what the Netflix rating is. Eventually, I don't know. We're going to have the technology where movie theaters are going to be irrelevant. I'm surprised that they are still relevant. Well, first the movie comes out in a theater, in a big room where you can buy overpriced popcorn and candy to watch with a bunch of people who talk during the entire movie. But if you wait a couple months, you can watch it at home, but the whole thing will be spoiled. So I think we're just going to see more and more movies that are just get instant home release. Come get our premium streaming service, pay us $10 a month, and you too can watch the latest remake of a Disney movie.
You got to pay an extra $30 for that one.
Oh, my mistake.
I'm interested in that. This is, however this dates the episode, but however the Mulan episode does. What the heck? However the Mulan movie does with their what am I trying to say? With their business model of pay $30 and you get a license to watch the movie however many times you want for a year.
I think it will do very well. I think it will do gangbusters because people are starved for new content and they know that Disney is a solid quality product.
Oh, I expect it to be a success.
With the live action remakes, which are all trash.
Yeah, but think about the value add for like a family of four.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not intended for you, single lonely nerds. Sorry, we're all those.
No.
What? Not to get too real, but it's not for us.
Send us if you're interested, send us an email. Gosh.
If you're interested, I can be found on Tinder, Bumble. Sorry. No, but it's going to do well.
Yeah, it probably will.
For families who need something new for their kids to not shut up about for a week.
Well, even already, what is it? Trolls World Tour was like one of the first movies to do that, where it's like they just had like the wrong time to come out, and it was like, oh well, we're just going to do an all digital release, and people can I think it was buy only or rent. I'm not entirely sure, but it made in box office it was a crash because whatever wasn't in the box office. But on streaming and downloads, it made over $100 million, was it?
Yeah,
it made a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, $100 million gross. That is huge for what is another CGI kids movie that we get every year.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the YouTube channels that make the most money, it's all kid focused because parents put their kids in front of YouTube and just leave it on autoplay. And your show doesn't even have to be any good if it has cartoons and kids singing the finger song. Kids will watch it.
Yeah, it's like you get autoplay ad revenue. It's just it's a cottage industry that works.
Yeah, I can see our society moving away from movie theaters, honestly.
Definitely. But I mean, it's funny that the same attitudes are what originated with the movie. So letting these kids just watch their YouTube videos on autoplay. YouTube is like, oh, we have YouTube Kids. You're fine. Parents are now in charge because we gave them these tools. Same with the MPAA. The very fact that these tools exist somehow absolves them of that responsibility, even though it really shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you're saying, like parents should be expected to look after their kids, to have those conversations, not to let multimedia raise the kids for them, honestly.
Yeah. And that would cause a lot less controversy. Like if people are upset about something, it's like, well, yeah, you can handle that yourself. It's fine.
Well, like even people who want to ban books from libraries.
Oh, that's the worst.
Oh, Harry Potter, satanic, can't have that in the library. Kids might start summoning Satan, like Harry Potter does all the time.
They might say the Wingardium Leviosa and just start. Oh, geez.
But like these are people who have not read the books, who make these snap judgment decisions. Yeah, like it's how hard is it to review content yourself before showing it to your kids if you are so concerned about that? But no one's got time for that. No one wants to spend time on that.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Like, but my folks, like, they at least wanted to like be aware of like stuff like that, like Harry Potter, and they like wanted to read ahead, and they came to the conclusion that it was, they didn't like some of the content. It was getting too. Well, they referred to it as too evil. Honestly, I should probably finish them at some point, give it my own evaluation. I've read like maybe half of them and then kind of moved on. But
just don't pay money for them because now I don't want to support JKR.
Oh, right. She a turf.
Yeah, she's a turf.
Pirate books, yar fiddle-dee-dee.
But here's the thing of like, maybe not for like very young kids, but what an opportunity to have to engage in something critically and be like, okay, here's something I really don't agree with. But here's some good points, here's some bad points. Child of mine who is 10, let's say, make your own judgment.
Or here's something you're going to experience because it's in, the cultural zeitgeist or just something that happens in life, and just like a way to show that to them. And that's absolutely something you can do and handle. You just need to, be active and responsible.
Right. And
it creates these echo chambers. Like, if you say, okay, I don't want you reading this, and then you look, and then the parent looks at the school and they say, oh, but the school might teach them this. Let me take them and put them into a school that isn't going to teach this. So you're just creating these, positive feedback and keeping yourself trapped, and your kid trapped, and then their kids trapped, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, like here's the thing: if it's a good idea, if it's a correct idea, it will stand up to scrutiny. So I'm not saying that like, oh yeah, go watch everything that you disagree with, go read every single book that is antithetical to your beliefs.
Oh,
but no, every now and then, open the door, try something new.
If something's worth the time, then usually it'll stand out.
And if your choice is going to have an impact on somebody else's life, yeah, you got to do your due diligence.
Yeah, and like research things thoroughly. Like there are reasons that people like stuff. You're not special or different because you don't like the mainstream. Obviously, something of value that people see in it if it's popular.
Oh, there's a whole culture of people who just like hate something because
it's popular. Big Bang Theory, that thing was the worst.
I think that there's justifiable reasons to not like that. It's just bad.
But it has a laugh track. It must be funny if it has a laugh track.
I'll only accept the Titus cut where they replace the laugh tracks with Titus's awkward laugh. It's my favorite.
But in conclusion, there's not a lot you can do about it until we kind of fundamentally change how we look at movies, which, is probably going to happen sooner rather than later. And, it's like the MPAA. I'm sure people who make movies that they think are big, fancy event movies, the Spielbergs and the Christopher Nolans, I'm sure they love this system because it totally works for them. But, we're heading to a much more individualistic America these days, and I don't think the MPAA stands up to that.
Now there's more ways to distribute stuff. It's very likely places will do their own things, like Netflix is trying to do, where they'll just sit like an age rating and some content warnings and just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, that's all you need, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the more options, people will figure out what works for them and just see what works. Just be aware and responsible. It works.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for Overnight Experts. I am Aiden.
I'm David.
And JJ.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you want to stay up to date on the show, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also have a Patreon if you wanted to contribute to the show. That just allows us to make it a higher quality. We'd appreciate you leaving us a review wherever you're listening to this. That will help other people listen to the show, and it's going to let us grow our audience. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.